Whoever sent you that shipment's going to be mad that you lost it. Grown-ups have no sense of humor. Good evening, everyone. This is Stone Gasman, live from New York City. We had just finished a audio commentary for the 1981 film Looker, written and directed by Michael Crichton. And now we are going to do an audio commentary for Outland, starring Sean Connery and written and directed by Peter Hyams. I had never seen this before until this week. And I have to say, I have a lot of positive things to say about it because I thought this movie was badass. I thought it was absolutely badass. Maybe it's just because of my experiences with movies and just how my knowledge of film has evolved since I was a child. The truth of the matter is that I think I saw this movie at the perfect time. Perfect time, perfect age, and I'm glad I waited on this movie because I probably would not have found it very good in my 20s necessarily, but I think now is the more than perfect time to finally check out this movie and see what a lot of people seem to like this movie. I mean, it still has a very positive reputation all these years later since it was released in May of 1981. So, but like I said, I had never watched this before until this week. So I think it's going to be very cool to go ahead and do this commentary. Anybody who's out there in the chat, please let me know you're here, and I hope you're all doing well tonight. Let me know throughout the commentary what you think of Outland, and I'll put it on the screen here. I really do hope I get a good turnout with a lot of support for this movie because it's probably an underrated. It may be an underrated gem in my book. It may be. Maybe a couple more viewings would have to convince me otherwise. But for right now, I got to say I feel pretty good about this movie, and I really like it, and hope you all will enjoy it tonight with me. So, without further ado, I am paused on the Lad Company logo, which we saw earlier at the beginning of Looker. And we will go ahead and get started at 3, 2, 1, and play. And here again is indeed the Lad Company logo. Peter, I should say that Michael Crichton, who did the audio commentary for Looker on the Blu-ray, on the Warner Archive Blu-ray, did not mention the Lad Company once. Actually, the only time he mentioned the Lad Company was when he said that his script got a turnaround, and it ended up from 20th Century Fox to the Lad Company when Alan Ladd Jr. left the studio to start his own production company. But Peter Hyams, on the other hand, on his Blu-ray commentary track, had nothing but positive things to say. He said that working for the Lad Company and making this movie was the high point of his life, essentially. He said that there was nobody he loved working with more than the Lad Company, which, of course, was founded by Gareth Wiegand, Alan Ladd Jr., and one other gentleman whose name escapes me right now, but I'll be sure to mention it later on. Production designer Philip Harrison, editor Stuart Baird, two very key forces in the success of Outland here. So this was written and directed by Peter Hyams. There's his credit right there. And interestingly enough, it was very recently on Twitter. It was just in the past week or so that somebody provided like a snapshot of every one of Peter Hyams' filmography, all the way from 1974's Busting with, if I recall correctly, that was Elliot Gould and the guy from Lost Highway, and his name escapes me, but whatever. So, but Peter Hyams had actually been directing films since 1974. I'm actually a little surprised at how long he's been around in the business. Uh, and really how all this started, the spark that made Peter Hyams want to write and direct Outland was the fact that he loved Westerns. I mean, he loved watching Westerns growing up. He had a special love for them, and he wanted to do his own stamp on the genre. But in the 1970s, the Western was unfortunately very much dead. Uh, Dead as a doornail. Nobody was producing Westerns, and even the ones that were being produced were not making any significant revenue. I think Little Big Man was one of the very last hits in the Western market for like a 20-year gap until Dances with Wolves came out. But Peter Hyams adores the Western genre, and he just wanted to do his own Western with his own stamp, his own sensibilities and everything, eccentricities, his own directorial stamp, essentially. And one film that particularly inspired him to do Outland was, of course, High Noon, the Fred Zinnemann film from 1952, starring Gary Cooper, which is now one of the great Western classics. I mean, it's up there with Searchers as like the pinocles of the genre. Well, the Searchers and the Wild Bunch. I mean, it's important. You can't not mention the Western genre without mentioning the Wild Bunch, the Sam Peckinpah masterpiece. But this is very much inspired by the classic High Noon, without being a ripoff, without being, it's something it's very different, and it's different enough from that classic film with Gary Cooper, especially visually. I mean, if you want to consider the outer space as like the Western landscape or the frontier, that's exactly what Peter Hyams was going for. Now, he admits 200% that another inspiration for this, of course, especially in the visuals, was of course Alien, the Ridley Scott film from 1979, which of course became famous for a little alien creature jumping out of somebody's stomach. But production design wise, this is very much inspired by the blue collar science fiction that was exhibited in Alien. I mean, from the suits and the corridors and everything. It's very, very Ridley Scott from Alien, very much so. And Peter Hyams is fully admits this on his commentary track. In fact, he mentions pretty much everything that inspired him to make this movie. All the even Spielberg he mentions at one point. I mean, he studied his contemporaries, and he wanted to make his own mark in film. But up until Outland, he hadn't really had a significant hit. The first film he worked on was actually a film with Peter Boyle, who we will later see in this film as the villain of the piece. But in 1971, Peter Hyams wrote and produced a movie called T.R. Baskin, which starred Peter Boyle and Candice Bergen and Marcia Rod, as well as the late, great James Caan, who we just lost recently. In fact, that was one of James Caan's first movies. I mean, well, actually, it was more like his 12th movie now that I'm double checking, because he actually had done other movies in the 60s before The Godfather and T.R. Baskin. But T.R. Baskin was written and produced by Peter Hyams. But it was directed by Herbert Ross, who later gave us The Goodbye Girl and Secret of My Success and Footloose and many other films. But that was where Peter Hyams was first introduced to film audiences, was this film with Peter Boyle. And in fact, the corporation that Peter Boyle says he works for in T.R. Baskin is also the name of the corporation used in this film, Outland. Now, the guy going crazy here in the spacesuit, saying that he has spiders all over him and everything. That is an actor by the name of John Ratzenberger. And if that name rings a bell, it's because he was on Cheers. He played the character Clavin on Cheers throughout most of its run when it started in 1982, approximately a year and a half after Outland's release in May of 1981. Oh, that's a breathtaking shot. That is even when I'm not seeing this on the big screen, because man, this film would be awesome to see on the big screen. I'm not the biggest Peter Hyams fan, but this is a movie I definitely pay to see on the big screen if it got some kind of re-release. But anyway, yeah, John Ratzenberger, he just died and fell to his basically fell into the vacuum of space to be no longer to be ever to be seen again. Well, he voiced characters and, of course, the Monsters Incorporated franchise. He was Ham in the Toy Story movies. So he has quite the career outside of Cheers. But I just have to say real quick that 2 years before John Ratzenberger played the victim here in Outland, he made this a piece of British trash called The Bitch, starring Joan Collins as the title character. There is a title song. It is based on her sister's book about the jet setting life and how she runs a disco in London called the Hobo. Yes, that is the name of the disco, the Hobo. And John Ratzenberger has this scene early in the beginning. He's has maybe 10 or 15 minutes of screen time in The Bitch. But for like the first scene, he's just constantly talking to the male lead about just how much of a bitch Joan Collins' character is. And it's glorious. It's glorious to hear, even though I do consider that one of the absolute worst films ever made. I mean, Joan Collins. I mean, look, if you want to see Joan Collins naked, I mean, that's up to you. But I'm just saying that you're going to get a lot of horrible disco music and a lot of ridiculous characters in trying to, the leader of the mob is the name of Thrush Feather. Okay, that's all you need to know about The Bitch. And I'm going to go ahead and cease my discussion on that since we are not talking about it. But anyway, here is, of course, the late, great Sean Connery, who we all know, of course, who Sean Connery is from the 1960s when he played James Bond and into the 70s. After he stopped playing James Bond in 1971, yeah, I know, asterisk, he started to make a series of films which were not really box office hits. Now, some of them got some serious acclaim, but they weren't really hits with the audience or with accolades or anything like that. I mean, Sean Connery was kind of struggling a little bit in the 70s. I mean, he of course he had made Zardoz, which is that infamous John Boorman film like The Wizard of Oz, whatever. He made that in 1974, but Peter Hyams does mention in his commentary track that, look, if you're going to watch any Sean Connery movie outside of Outland and James Bond, then get The Man Who Would Be King, which came out in 1975 with Sean Connery and Michael Caine. That's the film that Peter Hyams, when he saw that, he really did truly fall in love with Sean Connery as an actor at that point. And when he was working with him on Outland, he was just in utter awe of him. And he said that Sean was one of the most generous actors he had ever worked with. Ever. I mean, he wanted the other actors around him to shine. He didn't want to be the center of attention, and he just didn't have much of an ego or anything like that about it. He was just exceptionally generous. And he wanted to see dailies, which kind of intimidated director Peter Hyams, but reluctantly he allowed him to watch dailies, and Connery was always satisfied. Here again, nothing but positive words, positive experiences when it came to working with Sean Connery on Outland. But here we introduce the villain of the piece, The man with the white hat all the way to the right. Well, now we've changed shots. Thanks, Peter. But he has the beard. He's actually right there in the back. And he's going to be talking here in a bit, is an actor by the name of Peter Boyle. And of course, Peter Boyle, as most audiences are aware, there he is right there in all his bearded mustache glory. Peter Boyle is, of course, best known as the Frankenstein monster in the Mel Brooks spoof Young Frankenstein. But in fact, he had a much long career where, in 1970, he had done one of the first canon films called Joe, directed by John G. Avildsen, and that kind of put him on the map before Young Frankenstein, actually. Excuse me just one second. And of course, a lot of people remember Peter Boyle from, of course, Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver as well, where he played Wizard. And that's how he was billed in the opening credits. And and Peter Boyle as Wizard. Yeah, that was the name he was given. So his first film was a unknown, uncredited role in The Group. Then he was in the 1969 classic Medium Cool, which is every bit as awesome as it sounds. You all should check it out. He in The Monitors, Joe, 1970. He was in Diary of a Mad Housewife, which I do have Blu-ray behind me, where he appears at the very end of that masterpiece of a movie based on a well-known book by Sue Kaufman. He was also in Slither, Kid Blue, The Friends of Eddie Coyle, Crazy Joe, then Young Frankenstein, then Taxi Driver, The Brinks Job, Hardcore, which was the George C. Scott movie where he played a religious man whose daughter gets into porn, and he has to try to find her in the porn underworld. It's from the director of Taxi Driver. And even though he's no longer on screen right now, but Peter Boyle was also in Johnny Dangerously, Yellowbeard, Turquoise A2, Red Heat with Stallone, Kickboxer 2, The Road Back, Honeymoon in Vegas, The Santa Claus, Species 2, Dr. Dolittle, Monsters Ball. And his last film was the 2008 film All Roads Lead Home, although he was in the other two Santa Claus films as Father Time, which is actually that's actually a cool little reference, because of course one of the themes of Outland is, of course, time and how it gnaws at Sean Connery's dilemma in this movie. Let me say hi real quick to Jamie. How you doing? Wonderful to see you out tonight. Great movie choice, Stone. Yeah, like I said before the commentary started, I had never seen this movie. I had heard of it. I knew of it in name only, but no, I didn't get a chance to watch it until just this week, and I was actually very, very impressed with it. Considering the fact I'm not a fan of the director's work in principle, but we'll go into that, of course, as we go along here. And just to do a timestamp real quick, we are approximately 16 minutes in. We are approximately 16 minutes into Peter Hyams' Outland. So somebody decides to just walk out of the space station, or at this colony rather, because they're on the moon Io, which of course is one of Jupiter's moons. It should be noted that in this very scene, Peter Hyams notes what Alan Ladd Jr. did as a contribution, because Peter Hyams kind of played it a little bit safe with the plot, and he didn't want to get things to get too grisly, even though the conditions of working out on this moon are pretty, you're very remote. You got to deal with, very little air when you work outside in these spacesuits and everything. Alan Ladd Jr. said, "Hey, look, go for it. I mean, I want to see the guy's head actually explode when he gets exposed to the vacuum of space. And no, he was actually go for it. Have his head explode. Go for it. And that was the head of the studio giving a fierce latitude to his writer and directors when it came to the films that he produced in 1981 for the Ladd Company, which included Looker for writer-director Michael Crichton, and also Lawrence Kasdan for Body Heat. And like I said, we'll do Body Heat in a week or so here. But yeah, so with those three 1981 releases, Looker, Body Heat, and Outland, Alan Ladd Jr. gave a lot to the writer and directors for these individual projects. And so a lot of respect to the man for letting them do that. Although the truth is, Outland and Looker went over budget and over schedule. So there are those caveats. And sadly, Looker was, of course, a bomb. And Outland barely made its money back. I mean, this was about a $17 million production, and it made between 18 and 20 million. It really feels like this should have done better. I mean, I really do think that maybe with excuse me, a little bit better promotion and a little bit more, maybe, I don't know. I mean, usually it's the promotion that's usually to blame for this kind of thing. But it really seems like this movie should have done better. You would have thought that Sean Connery would have had enough star power still at that point. But really, it wasn't until the non-canon James Bond film Never Say Never Again, which finally brought him a level of star power that he hadn't seen since Diamonds Are Forever, when he originally left Bond in 1971 with Diamonds Are Forever. This is great lighting right here. This is something that Connery really noticed on the dailies, that he was really, really proud of Peter Hyams and his DP. But Sean Connery looks really good here. He looks really, really good. Now, his wife, which we met briefly in the beginning, and here's her message to him saying that she's going to take their son and they're going to go back to the Jupiter space station and basically hitch the next ride back to Earth, because she doesn't want him growing up in this kind of environment, which is and of him having to look at like books and everything of just pictures of Earth and everything, and him not experiencing the joys of growing up on planet Earth like all of us do, which is understandable. I mean, we understand her emotion right away, and she says, "Look, I love you. I truly love you, but I can't stay in this environment that much longer with our son." She just can't deal with it. She just unfortunately can't deal with it, and she has to go. But the actress playing his wife is a woman by the name of Kika Markham, and she had done a number of films that at least I have seen, even though she's very unknown. But she's a English actress, still with us today. She's 81, 82 years old. And she was in an Otto Preminger movie called Bunny Lake is Missing, which I think is one of the great films of the 1960s. It's a great movie with Laurence Olivier, which you all should check out. But Kika Markham has a key role in that, as well as Francois Truffaut's Two English Girls in 1971. And also she did other movies like The Innocent and Esther Khan and Killing Me Softly and Franklin. But the other movie I've seen her in is Wonderland. Not the one about the porn star. No. The other Wonderland, the one directed by Michael Winterbottom, which is an English drama about three sisters based on the Chekhov play, which is actually really good. And Kika Markham plays a mother in that movie that's like basically at the end of her life. She knows she's dying and everything. Very powerful performance that she gives in that very little scene drama called Wonderland from England in 1999. But here we have one of the best actors in the movie, and also one of the best performances in the movie. I fell in love with Francis Sternhagen here as Dr. Lazarus almost immediately. Now, on the commentary track, Peter Hyams explains that he originally wrote this part as a male. And he wrote it for a specific actor, actually, in mind. He wrote it for this actor named Kenneth McMillan. And Kenneth McMillan was in like David Lynch's Dune, and I love him from me personally. I have a film on DVD that I love him in called Whose Life Is It Anyway with Richard Dreyfuss, where he plays the judge at the end of the movie trying to decide if Richard Dreyfuss should be discharged from the hospital as a quadriplegic and basically accept no more forms of support and basically die because he doesn't want to go on living anymore. And Kenneth McMillan is brilliant in that movie as the judge. But Peter Hyams said that he thought that changing the gender of this role to a woman would add a lot of texture, and he's absolutely right. Francis Sternhagen has quite the career, although I must kick off saying that she is in one of my favorite films of the 1990s. I also have it on Blu-ray behind me. I should have dug it out for this commentary. But if you remember, she played one of the locals in the 1992 Michael J. Fox comedy Doc Hollywood. As a matter of fact, if you remember when he arrives at the cabin, early on in that movie, Francis Sternhagen is one of three women who are hanging out waiting for him with home-cooked meals. But Francis Sternhagen is the only one that didn't do a home-cooked meal, but instead just did a Hungry Man dinner. She literally had the Hungry Man dinner on her hand and just said, "I'm a bad cook." And she appears in various scenes throughout the movie. I mean, I love her line near the end of Doc Hollywood where she says to Michael J. Fox as he's leaving, "We made you a sack lunch. Remember, airplane food can cause gas." So, and that was Francis Sternhagen in a wonderful supporting role. She is still with us at 92 years old. Still with us at 92, which is extraordinary. Now, I'm going to go back to Francis Sternhagen in a bit, but we need to introduce Steven Berkoff here. Now, Steven Berkoff, I'm sure most of you remember from Beverly Hills Cop. He played the basically the head villain in that movie. Remember when Axel Foley comes into the country club, and he's in there having his meal, and he just tells him, "I'm back." Hey, I like this place. It's really stylish. Oh, good. We should make you a member. Well, that's Steven Berkoff from Beverly Hills Cop, and he has a key role here in the role of Sagan. And Sagan was actually named after the author Carl Sagan, who wrote the novel Contact. And I will be doing a commentary on Contact very soon for its 25th anniversary. So that is another commentary I will be doing in July. So, and we'll see Steven Berkoff here in a bit because he has a great scene here where he threatens the life of a prostitute. But here we need to talk about actor James Sikking, who was cast in 4 or 5 films directed by Peter Hyams, including The Star Chamber, which I've never seen before, but it stars Michael Douglas. So that alone is enough for me to check that out. James Sikking is also still with us. A lot of these actors, aside from Sean Connery, are still with us, which is amazing. He is now 88 years old, and he's been in films since the 1950s. I mean, he did Combat, the TV show Combat and the Outer Limits in the early 60s before he did The Strangler, 1964, The Fugitive television series. In Like Flint, he had an uncredited role in Like Flint as a Secret Service man. And he was also in Point Blank, which was that great Lee Marvin film directed by John Borman, who I mentioned before. Adam 12, Gomer Pyle, Hogan's Heroes. Charo, Daddy's Gone Hunting, The Night God Screamed. The Magnificent Seven Ride was one of his first films, which was the third film. And yes, there was actually a Magnificent Seven trilogy of all things. But he was also in the television series MASH, General Hospital, Ellery Queen, Hawaii Five-0. And then Peter Hyams cast him in his movie Capricorn 1, which if any of you remember Capricorn 1, that was a British film about a reporter that discovers that a supposed Mars landing by a crewed mission had been faked via a conspiracy involving the government and under duress by the crew themselves. And who plays a astronaut in that movie but O.J. Simpson. But that movie also had Elliot Gould in it, who was also in Peter Hyams' first movie, Busting. Capricorn 1 was actually a minor hit. It made $5 million. It had a budget of $5 million and it made $12 million at the box office. So that was a minor hit, which of course led to Outland. Although he did make one more movie with James Sikking between Capricorn 1 and Outland. And that was a forgotten movie called Hanover Square, starring Harrison Ford and Leslie Ann Down, which by all reports I've heard is not very good. But James Sikking, he had also been cast in The Star Chamber, which I just mentioned with Michael Douglas, which Peter Hyams directed in 1983. He was also in Up the Creek, Morons from Outer Space, Soul Man, Fever Pitch, Maid of Honor, and The Closer. Yep. And he's been in about 4 or 5 films directed by Peter Hyams. Yeah. Now, here we come. Let me do a timestamp real quick for anybody that just came in. We are approximately 30 minutes. We are right at the 30-minute mark in Peter Hyams' Outland. And here we have Steven Berkoff going absolutely nuts with his shirt off, and he's like wielding a knife and everything. He's a British actor, author, playwright, theatrical practitioner, and a theater director. So he's not just any actor. Okay, Steven Berkoff. He as a theater maker, he is recognized for staging work with a heightened performance style, eponymously known as Berkovian theater, and which that combines elements of physical theater, total theater, and expressionism. Yeah, this guy going nuts right here. This is Steven Berkoff that I'm talking about. His work has sometimes been viewed as an example of in-your-face theater. In-your-face theater, due to the intense presentation and taboo-breaking material in a number of his plays. As a film actor, he is known for his performance in villainous roles, including the portrayals of General Orloff in the James Bond film Octopussy. I almost forgot he was in that, actually. Octopussy came out the same year as Never Say Never Again, of course, where Sean Connery returned to the role, and it was known as the Battle of the Bonds. And ultimately, Octopussy won, not just with box office, but with longevity as well. I actually think Octopussy is a near classic, while Never Say Never Again is almost unwatchable. I mean, aside from Connery's performance, Never Say Never Again sucks. And to quote one of my good friends from Twitter, he said, "Oh my God, look at Connery's hairpiece. Such a horrible toupee. He looks like a bad game show host." It's just, but here we have Steven Berkoff acting up a storm right here. Oh, he really is sensational. He also played Adolf Hitler in the television miniseries War and Remembrance. I wouldn't be surprised if they saw this movie along with him in Beverly Hills Cop and Rambo: First Blood Part 2. Steven Berkoff has done a lot of recognizable movies and a lot of recognizable roles. Drama critic Alex Sears describes Berkoff's dramatic style as in-your-face theater. And just to go a little further with that, great shot right there in the chest, in Steven Berkoff's chest. But in-your-face theater, she describes as the language is usually filthy. Characters talk about unmentionable subjects, take their clothes off, have sex, humiliate each other, experience unpleasant emotions, become suddenly violent. At its best, this kind of theater is so powerful, so visceral, that it forces audiences to react. Either they feel like they're fleeing the building, or they're suddenly convinced that it is the best thing they've ever seen and want all their friends to see it too. It is the kind of theater that inspired us to use superlatives, whether in praise or condemnation. Also in 1988, Steven Berkoff directed an interpretation of Salome by Oscar Wilde, performed in slow motion at the Gate Theatre in Dublin. And for his first directorial job at the UK's Royal National Theatre, Berkoff revived the play with a new cast at the Littleton Auditorium. In 1998, his solo play Shakespeare's Violins premiered at London's Haymarket Theatre and was nominated for a Society of London Theatre Laurence Olivier Award for Best Entertainment. So Sean Connery and Francis Sternhagen they generate a pretty good friendship on screen here. And no romance implied. We don't need any of that. I mean, they just, he needs some kind of ally that's outside that's outside his precinct, and she is definitely the one. Yeah, she has a great line in this movie that she thinks she's always a space shuttle away from a court martial or something along those lines. I'm unpleasant, not stupid. But yeah, their friendship in this movie that generates over the course of the movie, I think, is one of the major portions of this movie's success. Now, it should be stated that Siskel and Ebert, when this came out for sneak previews in May of 1981, I just watched their review again. Roger Ebert liked it and said, yes, I recommend everyone seeing it. And Gene Siskel did not like it because he specifically thought the villains were stupid. And they were just not, they just weren't like Steven Berkoff level of acting, I guess you could say. Gene Siskel was a bit disappointed by the blandness of the villains, particularly when they start hunting down Sean Connery very much in the tradition and style of High Noon, as mentioned before, which was Peter Hyams' primary influence along with Alien. Now, it was mentioned before that the Ladd Company, that the first film they put out was Chariots of Fire, which won them the Academy Award for Best Picture because they co-produced it with Warner Brothers. Right before that, they had only done a music video called Divine Madness, which was basically Bette Midler shot at 4 different concerts in the year 1980. But this was the first film, Outland, was the very first film where we saw the Ladd Company logo, which consisted of the tree with the John Williams music underneath. And yes, that is John Williams' score. Now you know why it's one of my favorite logos in the history of film. I just like the music and the simplicity of the oak tree and everything. It's a really lovely logo, and I've always liked it more than most other production company logos. Oh, getting a blood sample from this guy to find out what he and the other guys on this colony have been suffering from, which has made them gone insane and basically die by suicide or accident or whatever the case may be. And of course, Sean Connery, as the investigator here, has to figure out what the hell is going on. I mean, that's weird. With Looker, Michael Crichton made a movie about supermodels mysteriously dying, and now we're watching a movie about people on this colony on the moon Io, and they're mysteriously dying by some kind of substance, perhaps a drug that we're going to find out here in a bit. But just to finish what I said earlier about Siskel and Ebert. So Roger Ebert liked it and Gene Siskel didn't. And that seemed to be like the mixed reaction across the board when it came to critics in 1981. There were a lot of people that were impressed with the production design. There was a lot of people that was impressed with the movie on a technical level. They admired and appreciated the craftsmanship on display, which is impossible not to notice, really. I love these sets. I really do. I like the little examination room in there, everything. I just like how everything was done in this colony on Io. Which, by the way, a lot of those facts about Io in the beginning were pretty true. Although they were off by 10 miles between Jupiter and the moon Io. They were about 10 miles short. That's about the biggest complaint you can levy at this movie, because Peter Hyams did a hell of a lot of research. He did a hell of a lot of research to the point where it wasn't discovered until 1979 by, I think it was the Voyager probe that actually noticed that Jupiter had a thin ice sheet covering the atmosphere. And he actually puts that in this movie. So he's very up to date on the science of the time, and still pretty true now. I mean, I was going to talk a little bit about Io, the moon, actually in the beginning, but I kind of got sidetracked talking about so many other things. Let me get that out of the way right now. But I wanted to bring this up real quick. Let's see. So Io is Jupiter's fifth moon. It is the most volcanically active body in the solar system. Io's surface is peppered with hundreds of volcanoes, some spewing sulfurous plumes hundreds of miles high. The volcanic moon is Jupiter's third largest and innermost Galilean satellite, and it was discovered by Galileo. It finds itself caught in a gravitational tug-of-war between Jupiter and two nearby Jovian moons known as Europa and Ganymede. These tidal forces generate the heat that drives Io's intense volcanic activity. Io's surface is changing at an incredible rate. Volcanic fissures ooze lava onto the moon's surface, filling impact craters and creating new floodplains of liquid rock. While Io's exact composition is unknown, it is likely molten sulfur and its compounds or silicate rock, according to NASA. Additionally, the moon's thin atmosphere is primarily composed of sulfur dioxide. And that's what I was referring to earlier, that was discovered by the satellite in 1979 by the Voyager probe. And thus Peter Hyams put it in his script and thus was able to film it when he filmed all the space bits in this movie. Io's surface temperature averages about minus 202 degrees Fahrenheit, resulting in the formulation of sulfur dioxide snowfields. But Io's volcanoes can reach 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and Io is often referred to as a celestial body of fire and ice. That would have been very interesting if this movie had more fire and ice. That would have been absolute. Can you imagine what Outland would have been like if it had almost nothing but fire and ice surrounding this place? Would be pretty badass, but of course, this is of course 1981, and well, of course, we need these people alive to tell the story. I mean, So here's Sean Connery continuing his investigation, seeing that 17 people have criminal records. That's a That's an unusually high number. Breakdown nature of offenses, how many for drug-related crimes? Only 2. Nicholas Spoda and Russell Yario. Who do they work for? Leisure Shipping. And like I said, this was the computer technology of the time. And finally, just to finish this up, Io's volcanic activity was first discovered by NASA Voyager missions in '79. The moon's volcanism is driven by powerful tidal forces. As Io orbits Jupiter in an elliptical fashion, the strength of Jupiter's gravity on Io varies depending on how close the moon is to the gas giant. This gravitation fluctuation creates a perpetual push and pull on the moon's interior in different directions, which causes Io's surface to bulge by as much as 330 feet. This movement causes Io's rocks to grind past each other, generating vast quantities of heat, 20 times more heat flow than Earth. And then finally, if Io were Jupiter's only moon, its orbit would have likely, quote unquote, settled down into a circle a long time ago. The ongoing constant outward tug from Io's outer neighbors Europa and Ganymede ensure that does not happen. Io cannot escape this perpetual game of gravitational tug and war and subsequently planetary heating. Mm-hmm. And one more thing. Io was the first of Jupiter's moons discovered by the Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei on January 8, 1610. And according to NASA, he discovered the moon the day prior, but could not differentiate between Io and Europa, another Jupiter moon, until the next night. This discovery, along with the discovery of 3 other Jovian moons, was the first time a moon was ever found orbiting a planet other than Earth. Galileo's discovery eventually led to the understanding that planets orbit the sun instead of our solar system revolving around Earth. Galileo was first referred to this moon as Jupiter 1. In the mid-1800s, the moon was renamed Io. In Greek mythology, Io was a priestess of Hera, Zeus's wife, and the daughter of Eunuchus, the king of Argos. Zeus, the counterpart for the Roman god Jupiter, fell in love with her, but turned her into a cow to avoid being caught with her by his wife. And I don't think we're gonna see a sequence coming up here in a meat locker. I don't think that Peter Hyams intentionally wanted us to think of the cow from that mythology. Just saying. And let's see here. Okay, now this is something that Peter Hyams does not mention in his commentary. And it is a pretty good commentary for the most part. Actually, there is one thing I wanted to, explain here real quick. So yeah, all that's on this Blu-ray is a commentary track. That's the only bonus feature with that and a theatrical trailer that we get. And it's a pretty good commentary. I actually liked it better than Michael Crichton commentary for Looker. It starts out as an excellent commentary, but he does have a silent spot every now and then, which increases as the film goes along. Peter Hyams covers lighting, focus pulling, model photography, mechanical effects, orchestration, designing. He also comes across as quite humble and often refers to little details he wished he had done better. His other major discussion points are the actors. Clearly, he loved working with them. And he speaks a lot about how great it was to work with Sean Connery. Indeed. Absolutely. But one thing he does not mention in the commentary, which should be mentioned here, he handled the cinematography for the majority of the movie, while the credited cinematographer, Stephen Goldblatt, usually worked when there was something Hyams did not know how to do. Goldblatt was misleadingly hired by Peter Hyams, who really wanted him to stand aside and do nothing, and to use him as a scapegoat for the Ladd Company in case anything went wrong while using the new Introvision process. He was furious at being lied to and wouldn't have taken the job if he had known Hyams' intentions at the outset, but stayed on in order to learn how to use Introvision, and because as a young cinematographer with the sole prior feature credit, quitting the movie would have ruined his career. It is the only one of his movies whose wrap party he skipped. But then again, that's the only negative thing I read about Peter Hyams with this movie. So, but we have to throw it out there. What it should be mentioned is that, I mean, Looker, of course, had that CGI technology very, very early on before Tron and Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Well, this film, Outland, is one of the first movies to be released theatrically with the Mega Sound sound system format. Mega Sound was a movie theater sound system created by Warner Brothers in the early 1980s. It was used to enhance the premiere engagements of a handful of their films. Theaters equipped for Mega Sound had additional speakers mounted on the left, the right, and rear walls of all the auditorium, selected soundtrack events with lots of low-frequency contact, thuds, crashes, explosions, etc., were directed to these speakers at very high volume, creating a visceral effect intended to thrill the audience. Unfortunately, this process was only used for maybe 4 movies, I think. 4 movies that Warner Brothers put out in the early 1980s with this process. And here's here's Sean Connery tracking one of the most likely drug dealers of what everybody is taking. That's the thing. Okay, the name of the drug that is being taken in this movie is called synthetic amphetamine polydicaloric euthymol. I think I pronounced that right, even though it kind of doesn't matter. Polydicaloric euthymol. And what I found interesting, thanks to IMDb, is that in the 1991 film Terminator 2, Judgment Day, the words polydicaloric euthymol are seen on small yellow barrels of explosives. So now we know where James Cameron got that idea from. And this is something that obviously I need to bring up, because a lot of people have said that this could be easily set in the same universe as Alien. And the truth of the matter is that in the production design, I can definitely see that. Of course, it's a completely different story where the villains are actually just human beings who are, dispensing this drug out so these workers can do longer hours and everything. But over the years, fans have formulated a theory that this film could very well be set in the same universe as Alien. Due to many similarities, both were presented by Alan Ladd Jr., who greenlit Alien as president of 20th Century Fox, and Outland as head of the Ladd Company, and both were scored by Jerry Goldsmith. 9 department heads involved in production design worked on both movies. So that definitely explains why a lot of this looks like it could easily have been set in the Alien universe, because a lot of those who worked on Alien came over to work on Outland. And the director says on the commentary track, whenever you do action scenes or chase scenes, make sure they're in claustrophobic settings, because that always adds to the fun. Now, a lot of the extras that you see on these sets, I mean, Peter Hyams basically just gave him this direction, just hang out, chill, do whatever you want to do. And of course, after 4 or 5 hours, they would get rather bored. But that's exactly what Peter Hyams wanted. Like, what? Somebody's running around here? uh, I don't know about you guys, but I think I'd be hanging out at the pool hall 24/7. But this really does look like a genuine facility that could easily exist in the Alien universe. That is very true. Also, each movie features a huge conglomerate that deals in interstellar mining and transport, colloquially known as the company, and operates with little regard for the safety or well-being of its employees. Of course. Both movies feature a very similar production design that presents a, quote, used future, where structures and technology don't look state-of-the-art, but worn out and visibly aged. Both movies have a protagonist that uncovers a company conspiracy, after which attempts are made to silence them, and they are finally left defending themselves completely on their own. Neither movie is set in a specific year, although Alien was retroactively set in 2122. So basically a century from now. So they could take place in the same time frame. Lastly, the character Kane in Outland could be an homage to Kane, played by John Hurt in Alien. And look, Peter Hyams admits several times in the commentary that the world of Alien very much inspired this world as well, but without specifically stating if this, of course, is in the same universe. And I'm not sure if that was altogether intentional either. But here again, because you had 9 department heads who worked on Alien as well as Outland, I mean, you could tell where they got the experience from at any rate. Sean Connery kicking ass here. Oh! Oh, man. And although this movie is often touted as a remake of High Noon, which in many ways it is, starring Gary Cooper set in outer space, numerous elements greatly influenced the movie Moon from 2009, which was written and directed by Duncan Jones and starring Sam Rockwell. I've seen Moon a couple times, and I can definitely say for a fact, yeah, that there was definitely some influence from Outland in the movie Moon. Both plots contain similar elements of a mining company using questionable methods, driven only by profits at the expense of their employees. What else is new? The digital countdown clock is nearly identical in size, shape, and readout. Also, both are counting down the arrival of assassins sponsored by a shady corporation who intend to use murder to cover up acts of corporate greed. And this is basically Outland's version of a prison cell, where they put them in this astronaut suit and have them just basically float in this cell block. That has got to suck. That has got to suck. Oh man. Let me do a timestamp real quick for everybody out there watching Outland. We are approximately 56 minutes in right now. We just reached the 56-minute mark, and we have approximately 53 minutes to go. So we're over the hump. We're over the hump halfway through the 1981 movie Outland, written and directed by Peter Hyams. Now, I had mentioned before Chariots of Fire, which won Best Picture in 1981 and was co-produced by Warner Brothers and the Ladd Company. Sean Connery himself was supposed to appear in that movie, but because of the fact Outland went over budget and over schedule, he never got to be in Chariots of Fire, but he was supposed to be in it. So he missed out on being in the Best Picture of the year. And here we have Peter Boyle again. like I said, Gene Siskel did not like Peter Boyle in this movie. I like him just fine. In fact, Peter Boyle was exceptionally grateful to Peter Hyams for casting him in this role and for remembering him from the film they worked on back in 1971. And as I mentioned before at the very beginning, the name of the company that, of course, he works at here in Outland is Con Amalgamate, something like that. Sorry. Well, that is the same company that he mentions that he works for in T.R. Baskin, which, of course, Peter Hyams wrote and produced back in 1971 with Peter Boyle. So a nice little in joke there for anybody that's seen T.R. Baskin. Now, I think that now is the perfect point to talk about, really dive into Peter Hyams's filmography here, because I gotta tell you, after I went through Peter Hyams's filmography numerous times, the truth of the matter is that many of these movies I've never seen nor heard of before, and many of them don't have very positive reputations. I gotta say that. Uh, Here again, I mean, just recently on Twitter, somebody had made a collage of all the films that he's directed. And the truth of the matter is, I mean, there's some that I just straight up have no interest in ever seeing, like Capricorn 1, for example. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't mind watching like Busting or Our Time or Peeper from 1975. But the truth of the matter is that a lot of his films don't have, very little, very few of them have high critical acclaim. A lot of them were just basically dismissed as like B pictures. Um, but we have, he had also written the screenplays for Telephone, directed by Don Siegel, which was where the Soviet Union planted a number of long term deep cover sleeper agents all over the United States after the Cuban Missile Crisis. So spies so thoroughly brainwashed they didn't even know they were agents. He co-wrote that screenplay with Sterling Silphant. And he did Capricorn 1, and then he did Hanover Street, which, like I said, Capricorn 1 made a little bit of money. Hanover Street was a bomb in 1979. And then he wrote the final film for Steve McQueen, which is known as The Hunter, which, if you're a Steve McQueen fan, I'm sure you're very much well aware of that movie. It's not that good. I've tried watching it at least twice, and it really kind of lost me both times. Oh, here, James Sikking, he's terrific here because he never blinks. And that was something that Peter Hyams noticed, that it's like, wow, the man did not blink once. Now, the tongue is fake. That is indeed a fake tongue, and it's a little obvious, but what are you going to do? It's still a great death scene for James Sikking. But after Outland barely made its money back at the box office because it was released in May of 1981, and it barely made its money back. After that, he then wrote and directed a movie called The Star Chamber in 1983, which I've never seen, but it has Michael Douglas. And it was released by 20th Century Fox in 1983. That was a bomb as well. It made under its budget of $8 million, and it didn't even make $6 million. Now, after The Star Chamber, however, Peter Hyams would go on to make the film that he's probably the most proud of. And I certainly don't blame the man for that. And that would be the sequel to 2001, A Space Odyssey, which is actually 2010, the year we make Contact, which MGM produced in 1984. That is probably the movie that Peter Hyams is most proud of. I can almost guarantee you. It was, a very high budget film, and it did not too bad at the box office. I mean, it did make a little bit of money. But the problem that a lot of people will have with 2001: A Space Odyssey, myself included, is the fact it provided answers when a lot of people didn't really need answers. You know, it took away from the mystery of 2001: A Space Odyssey, and this, a lot of critics noted this. I mean, a lot of critics were very mixed on 1984's 2010, the year we made contact, but at least they noted that it was respectful to the Kubrick film. But it got Oscar nominations. It was nominated for 5 Academy Awards. I mean, it was one of Peter Hyams' biggest successes, even if it didn't make a lot of money. Now, after 2010, he then went off and made a buddy cop action comedy, which is affectionately known as Running Scared, from 1986, which stars Gregory Hines and Billy Crystal. And that is actually very fondly remembered now. And that made about 38.5 million. So that was his biggest hit up until that time in 1986. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So on his 10th movie was Running Scared. He finally had a hit. He finally got a hit on his hands with the 1986 film Running Scared. He did serve as an executive on the Monster Squad, which I actually discovered very recently thanks to my friend Jay the Stingray. I did a commentary with him several months ago. That was a lot of fun. After the Monster Squad, Peter Hyams then directed a film called The Presidio, also with Sean Connery. As a matter of fact, he would reunite with Sean Connery for The Presidio, in 1988. Never seen that movie personally. It also has Mark Harmon in it. That was also another decent hit. It made about $51 million. The critics didn't love it, but it did make $51 million. Then after that, he did a remake of the 1952 film noir Narrow Margin, which, if you want to call Outland a remake of High Noon, then I guess you could say Narrow Margin was definitively a remake of The Narrow Margin from 1952. Never seen that remake, and unfortunately it bombed in the theater. It didn't even make half its budget back. Then he did the John Ritter comedy Stay Tuned, which I remember laughing a few times at, and I'm the biggest John Ritter fan on the planet. I would have to rewatch Stay Tuned in order to have a more accurate opinion on it. But I got to say, in 1992, I did not like it. Then we have, without a doubt, the biggest film of Peter Hyams' career. It came out in 1994. And it was one of those rare cases where I snuck into an R-rated movie. And that would be, in fact, the 1994 film Time Cop, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's the only Peter Hyams movie to make over 100 million at the box office. And it's actually pretty good for what it is. It's actually pretty good. It involves time travel and everything. And then after that, he made another pretty good Jean-Claude Van Damme film called Sudden Death. And look, I'm just going to say this. I don't know. I can't say for sure if Time Cop and Sudden Death are two of the best films in his career, but I would put them up there right below Outland because you know what? They are a lot of fun. They are really good action sci-fi movies that, I think that deserve a little bit more credit than most other of Jean-Claude Van Damme's movies. I mean, if I was going to go back and watch Van Damme, those are the two movies I would watch, especially any day over like a Steven Seagal movie or something like that. Now, after Sudden Death, unfortunately, Peter Hyams' career basically got flushed down the toilet and it never, ever recovered. Because after Sudden Death, he then made a Paramount movie called The Relic. I saw The Relic in the theater and I laughed at it. There were some people that liked it. There are still some people that look back on The Relic with fond memories. I'm not one of them. I thought it was an absolute joke when I saw it in the theaters. And the movie he made after that, which I think is only slightly better, which is End of Days, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I saw that in the theater, and I found that to be one of Arnold's worst films. Really, I'd rather watch like Collateral Damage over over End of Days, you know. And even Arnold Schwarzenegger himself kind of dismisses that movie and dismisses Peter Hyams because he said, "Oh yeah, James Cameron recommended him to me, and I don't know, I just didn't think he was the right fit for this movie." I don't know. I mean, based on his career, I mean, I would say he was a more than fine fit, but the movie was terrible. I thought it was absolutely awful. And then the three films he made after that went straight to video: A Sound of Thunder, Beyond a Reasonable Doubt, and his last film was the 2013 movie Enemies Closer, which reunited him with Jean-Claude Van Damme. So you look over that resume and you think, okay, 2010, Running Scared, Time Cop, and Sudden Death are probably the only ones I can pick out of that lineup, along with Outland, as being ones that are worth seeing. I would have to go back and watch The Presidio, and of course I'd have to watch The Star Chamber, just because I love Michael Douglas and I'll watch anything he's in, even though the movie's reputation is not very high. But that's the deal with Peter Hyams' career as a director. I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, Running Scared is a pretty good buddy cop movie, but here again, pretty good is not quite up there with great as far as I'm concerned. Here again, if I was going to just pull a few out, Outland, The Star Chamber, 2010, Running Scared, and Time Cop, and maybe Sudden Death as a sixth one, just to. The scenes with the strippers are absolutely amazing. You know, this movie probably has less nudity than Looker, and yet Looker got a PG rating. I mean, how does that work out? I have no idea. And this is very similar to like Gary Cooper in High Noon coming into like the into the saloon, and everybody is looking at him with trepidation and judgment and everything. Like, what are you doing? They're not too happy that he's been causing trouble and flushing all these drugs down the toilet. That's why Peter Boyle in the beginning was like, you know what? I mean, let them party. Let them party. I mean, they do a stressful job up here. And then here's the ticking time clock motif, which is, of course, straight out of High Noon. I mean, High Noon, that 1952 film is dictated by the clocks and everything. And here we have this of the space shuttle and how long it's going to take to arrive at the outpost. That's essentially the ticking time clock from High Noon. Oh, yeah, these sets are amazing. They're absolutely amazing. Now, somebody who we have not talked about yet is Clark Peters here as Sergeant Ballard, where Sean Connery asks him, how many of you can I count on? And he says, well, you know what? These guys have families, they have families. Well, anyway, Clark Peters, he was actually born in 52. He was actually born the same year that High Noon came out. And he is best known for the role of Lester Freeman in the television series The Wire from 2002 to 2008, as well as Albert Lambro in the television series Treem in 2010 to 2013. Now, I've never seen The Wire, admittedly. I've always heard great things about it, but I've never seen it. But even Peter Hyams notes on the commentary track that he loves watching The Wire with Clark Peters in it because he knows Clark from this movie. But he's also in the movies John Wick. He's in Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Oh, that's right. He later plays the sheriff that arrives in town and he fires Sam Rockwell in Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. And in John Wick, he's actually in the hotel in the oh, what is it, the Continental Hotel. Yeah, that's right. I recognize him now. Yeah, Peter Clark. Hmm. Outland was only his third movie. His first movie was The Music Machine in 1979. Then he was in Silver Dream Racer in 1980. Mona Lisa, 1986. Notting Hill, K-Pax, Head of State, Freedom Land, The Poker House, Trump Seed, Marley and Me, Endgame, not that Endgame, another Endgame, Nativity, Locked In, Searching for Sunny, Red Hook Summer, John Wick, of course, The Best of Me, Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, The Mandela Effect, Come Away, Da 5 Bloods, and I Want to Dance with Somebody, which is being filmed right now. So Clark Peters is still very much active in the business. Oh yeah, Da 5 Bloods. That was a Spike Lee joint, if I remember correctly. So Clark Peters is still working. He's still very much working and with us. But Frances Sternhagen, who I was going to continue talking about from before, she has one of the most memorable performances here next to Sean Connery. But she was born in Washington, D.C., the daughter and only child of a U.S. tax court judge. And Gertrude Sternhagen, she was educated at Madeira and Potomac schools in McLean, Virginia, which is actually very close to where I grew up. At Vassar College, she was elected head of the drama club after, quote, silencing a giggling college crowd at a campus dining hall with her interpretation of a scene from Richard II, playing none other than Richard himself. She attended the Catholic University of America as a grad student, where she met Thomas Carlin, her future husband, to whom she was married from 1956 until his death in 1991. The couple had 6 children. She also studied at the Perry Mansfield School of the Theater and New York City's Neighborhood Playhouse. She started her career teaching acting, singing, dancing to school children at the Milton Academy in Massachusetts, and she first performed in 1948 at a Bryn Mawr Summer Theater in the Glass Menagerie and Angel Street. She won 2 Tony Awards. One for Best Supporting Actress, Dramatic in 1974 for The Good Doctor, written by Neil Simon. And she also won a Drama Desk Award for Outstanding Featured Actress in a Play for that. And in 1995, she won another Tony for the revival of The Heiress. And if you remember, The Heiress was based on a book by Henry James called Washington Square. And the original Heiress movie came out in 1949 with Olivia de Havilland, which she got her second Oscar for. Yep. And Frances Sternhagen also played the title character in the 1988 Pulitzer Prize-winning drama Driving Miss Daisy, which was originated by Dana Ivey at the Playwrights Horizons in New York. Sternhagen took over the role after the show moved to the John Houseman Theater and played it for more than 2 years. Her off-Broadway awards include 2 nominations for the Drama Desk Award for Outstanding Actress in a Play in 1998 for a revival of Eugene O'Neill's Long Day's Journey into Night. And in 2005 for the World War drama Echoes of the War. She also won Distinguished Performance Obie Awards for The Room and A Sight Ache. In 1998, she won the Dramatists Guild Fund's Madge Evans and Sidney Kingsley Award for Excellence in the Theater. All right. And Frances Sternhagen, before she made Outland, and by the way, for her performance in Outland, she got the Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actress. So she actually won the Saturn Award for this role in Outland. But before that, she was in the hospital. Fedora, not literally the hospital, but in the movie Hospital with George C. Scott from 1971. She was also in Starting Over with Michael Douglas, romantic comedy from 1983, Bright Lights, Big City in 1988 with Michael J. Fox, Sibling Rivalry, Misery, and of course Doc Hollywood, which he also did with Michael J. Fox, and that's my favorite performance by her. She was also in Misery, where she was nominated again for another Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actress, as well as the 1992 movie Raising Cain, directed by Brian De Palma. She's in that movie as Dr. Lynn Waldheim. Oh. And her other films include The Mist, the Stephen King movie, The Mist, Julie and Julia, Dolphin Tale, and As So It Goes. And I believe she is now officially retired from acting, but she's still with us. She's 92 years old. Yeah. But I think she is now officially retired from films and television. I mean, I can't imagine how many grandkids she has if she has 6 children. I mean, you can only imagine how many grandkids she has. So she's probably spends her days hanging out with them. Most of the reviews I read on Outland said that the boy here in this scene is terrible, like laughably bad. I don't know. He's not really important to the plot in any way. And like I said, we just have this one scene with him, and it's relatively painless, I think. I've seen worse kids out there act on screen. But let's see here. Oh, yeah, this kid's name, his name, just to throw it out there, is Nicholas Barnes. And actually, he did he did some stuff after this. I mean, mostly just television work, though. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all I can say about the kid. His name is Nicholas Barnes, and some critics didn't like him. Yeah, that's all I can say about him, unfortunately. All right. Let's see. Okay, let's go ahead and do a timestamp real quick. I'm pretty much out. I'm out of it. After 2 commentaries and we got a half hour left. We have approximately a half hour left of Outland because we are now coming up on the 1 hour and 20-minute mark. The 1 hour and 20-minute mark of Outland. We have approximately 30 minutes left to go. So, yeah, going back over Peter Hyams's filmography, this may be his best film. It may be his best work. I mean, of course, I would have to rewatch Running Scared and 2010, and maybe the Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. I don't know. But if I was going to rewatch those and a few others I haven't seen, I think I would be more than comfortable calling Outland as Peter Hyams' best movie. I think I mean that. I think, especially over 2010, which here again, Outland has a lot more to offer, I think, than 2010, which is just, which doesn't offer, it just offers like these explanations for questions that were never asked in the first place. But despite that film's technical merits. Where are your men? My men? My men are shit. Yeah. That's one of my favorite lines, actually. So, see, if only he put some fire and ice around here, this would have made this badass movie even more badass had he actually went as far as to put fire and ice around the colony to mimic what it would be actually like to be on Io, according to the scientific data and evidence. It would be pretty awesome. Now, one thing I forgot to mention was that Gareth Wiggin, who I mentioned before as being he was at 20th Century Fox when Alan Ladd Jr. Gave the green light to Star Wars and Alien. He joined him over at the Ladd Company. He followed Alan Ladd Jr., and he's one of the 3 founding members of the Ladd Company. And he was actually the one responsible for coming up with the title for Outland. Now, originally, according to Peter Hyams' script, the title of the script was called Io. It was simply the moon's name. It was called Io. But of course, a lot of people like to joke nowadays and say this movie is actually High Moon, based on High Noon and make it High Moon. But anyway, so this movie, originally the script was called Io. And when Gareth Wiegand noticed that, he said, you know what, you've got to change the title because everybody's going to look at it and think the movie is called 10. And at first, Peter Hyams was kind of taken aback by that. Like, what? So he takes it around to several people in the company at the Ladd Company, and he goes to all the secretaries' offices and everything. Just asks a bunch of random people, "What is the title of this script?" Every single one of them said 10, and it's funny and it's hilarious because there was an actual movie called 10, which came out in 1979, also distributed by Warner Brothers. But the production company was actually Orion, which was directed by Blake Edwards and starring Dudley Moore and Bo Derek in her most famous role where she's running on the beach and she smokes pot and has sex with Dudley Moore in a Mexican hotel room. Legendary movie, and it's everybody needs to see it. It is so awesome. But yeah, there was already a movie called 10. So. But yeah, if you look at a script that says IO on it with just I and 0, I can see why you would think it's 10 too. So Gareth Wiegand actually came up with the title Outland. Peter Hyams loved it and said, yeah, let's do it. Let's go with it. And the entire movie Outland was filmed at Pinewood Studios in England. So this was all built on probably the James Bond set. I mean, probably the biggest set that is over at Pinewood, which is the James Bond set. Of course, they would have been doing this movie between For Your Eyes Only, which came out the same year, as well as Octopussy, which of course came out in 1983. And I mentioned Introvision before. Outland was pioneering as the first motion picture to use Introvision, which is a variation on front projection that allows foreground, midground, and background elements to be combined in the camera, as opposed to using optical processes such as blue screen matting. This enabled characters to convincingly walk around miniature sets of the mining colony. And you saw that in like the very, very beginning when like the actors came off in their spacesuits out of the elevator and they're doing their work. And then John Ratzenberger complains about spiders and then basically falls into the vacuum of space and everything. But yeah, that is a perfect example of what Introvision was all about. But like I said, like they only applied it for like a few movies, and Warner Brothers only did it for like a year or two, which is really weird. And the music to Outland was, of course, composed and conducted by veteran composer Jerry Goldsmith. And of course, this was a year before 1982. He would give us his best work, which I think include First Blood, as well as Poltergeist, and also a tiny movie that he did called Night Crossing, which is right there. That's a Disney movie that he scored the same year in 1982. But Jerry Goldsmith had previously scored Capricorn 1 for writer-director Peter Hyams, and had recently provided the soundtrack to, of course, Alien, which, of course, we've talked about quite a bit here. The soundtrack to Outland has been released 3 times on disc. So if you want to get the soundtrack, the first came out in 1993 by GMP Crescendo. The second one, June 2000, through Warner Music Group. And a 2-disc extended edition released on June of 2010 through Film Score Monthly. The expanded release also includes the John Williams music for the Lad Company logo. I would actually like to pick up this now. And the material composed for Morton Stevens for the fight between O'Neill and Ballard, and the source cues for The Rec Room by Michael Boddicker. The distributed 35 millimeter prints have Dolby Stereo audio and the 70 millimeter anamorphic blow-up film prints featuring 6-track Dolby Stereo audio. All 70 millimeter prints were encoded for a mega sound option, in which theaters needed to be outfitted with more speakers and sound equipment. Outland was one of only 4 films released by Warner Bros. To officially make use of their mega sound movie theater sound system in the early 1980s. But can you imagine what it must have been like to actually watch this movie back in 1981 with the mega sound and the intro version? That would have been amazing. And this film was actually nominated for an Academy Award for Best Sound. John Wilkinson, Robert W. Glass Jr., Robert Thurwell, and Robin Gregory. But of course, as a lot of the Oscars that year went to, Best Sound, I think that year went to Raiders of the Lost Ark. But of course, the rest of the awards were picked up by either Reds or Chariots of Fire, or On Golden Pond. Those were all the big winners in 1981. But Outland did get one nomination. So now, the critical reaction to Outland. Gary Arnold of the Washington Post. In Outland, writer-director Peter Hyams has adapted the plot of High Noon to an intriguing science fiction environment. A huge titanium mine located on Io, a volcanic moon of Jupiter. But the conventions that worked for High Noon break down in the high-tech atmosphere of Outland, and the story seems trite and dinky. In the Boston Globe, Michael Blowen was more favorable. Quote, "The parallels between Outland and Fred Zinnemann's 1952 Western High Noon are apparent. Writer-director Peter Hyams has transported the characters and motifs from the dusty frontier town of Gary Cooper to the frontiers of space. While Hyams keeps the story barreling along, he also develops a corollary anti-capitalist theme. Io is an outpost for exploitation, and it doesn't make any difference whether the miners are digging gold in the Colorado hills or titanium on Jupiter's moon. The greed of the corporate class will prevail." Outland marks the return of the classic Western hero in a space helmet. His outfit has changed and his environment has expanded, but he's still the same. When Connery stares down the barrel of that shotgun, you'd better smile. Yes. But at the same time, I mean, even though there were some critics who absolutely loved Outland, like Roger Ebert and those I mentioned before, there were people that didn't like it too. I mean, like I said, this movie's reputation was very much mixed at the time, but I think it has grown a little bit more in the past 40 years. Just a bit more. Actually, you know, it should be noted that the Blu-ray, which came out in 2013, which has the commentary by Peter Hyams, actually got a hell of a review by Blu-ray.com. He gave the movie 4.5 stars. This is, Michael Rubin, yes. He gave the movie 4.5 stars, and he gave the video and audio top marks as well, and as well as the extras. And in his review, he notes something that's very important as regarding to the DVD history of Outland that needs to be mentioned here. Seldom has the usual claim that the Blu-ray looks better than the DVD been less relevant in the case of the DVD of Outland was one of the nadirs of that format, with a soft, noisy image beset by aliasing and interference. It routinely topped lists of DVDs in need of new transfers and remastering. Almost anything would look better. Well, there's a new transfer at last. It's on Blu-ray, and the DVD has been rendered irrelevant, except maybe as landfill. Hyams has done his own cinematography for most of his career. As he makes clear on the commentary track, he was closely involved in the cinematography for Outland, for which he credited cinematographer is Stephen Goldblatt. And we have already talked about earlier how Stephen Goldblatt basically did very little, and was very upset at the fact that he did very little. Hyams is famous and often cursed for his dark images. On the Blu-ray's commentary, he mocks his IMDb bio, which claims that he likes to shoot in, quote, natural light levels. What he likes, he says, is to be on a soundstage where none of the light is natural and all of it can be controlled. When Hyams plunges large portions of the frame into darkness or shadow, it represents a deliberate choice on his part. One can disagree with the choice aesthetically, but it has nothing to do with quote-unquote natural light. To accurately represent Hyams' preferred style of lighting, an image must have true blacks. And Warner's 1080p AFC encoded Blu-ray delivers a feature that becomes immediately evident in the opening establishing shots of the IO mining facility. Colors are extremely vivid when called for, whether it's the bloody red of injuries or the bright green of the facility's greenhouse, where one quote-unquote bushwhacker goes looking for his victim, or the blue law enforcement uniforms, which contrast sharply with bright lights in the Marshal Service offices and also the infirmary. Someone somewhere will probably claim DNR, because somebody always does, but in fact there is no evidence of detail stripping or degrading on this transfer, nor is there any indication of artificial sharpening, nor did I notice any compression artifacts. The darkness of Hyams' photographic style and the softness inherent in the pre-CG FX may give pause to some viewers, but this Blu-ray accurately represents the film Outland as it was made and seen in 1981. And he said he saw it numerous times in the theater himself. Of course, if you don't count the introversion and the mega sound, yeah, this is probably as good as it gets. So if you're an Outland fan, you need to have this in your collection. You really do. And the commentary is very good. I mean, like I said, he does have a lot to talk out on a technical scale, which is great. All right. Timestamp, we are 1 hour and 35 minutes in. We are just under the 1 hour and 35 minute mark for Outland, and we have approximately 14 minutes left to go. Wow. Yeah, these final scenes of Outland are pretty tense. They're pretty tense. I mean, like I said, I don't have much of a complaint about Outland overall as a film. I think as a science fiction movie, it does extremely well. I think in terms of commenting on profits over people in the world of corporations and everything, I think it does an exceptionally good job too. I would fully believe that in the future that a facility like this would exist on one of Jupiter's moons, if we can ever figure out a way to transfer back and forth to those planets. Interestingly enough, of course, after this, Peter Hyams made the Star Chamber. Oh, that blow up of the face, that reminded me of the end of Live and Let Die, when Yaphet Kotto completely blows up at the end. Oh yeah, that's pretty damn cool. Greenhouse level. But yeah, this may in fact be Peter Hyams' best work, period. It may in fact be his best work. I mean, it's still 40 years later, this production design is still very, very impressive. Like I said, all opticals and models and miniatures. It's a lost form of art. It really is sadly a lost form of art, which of course is given its way to just entirely CGI, which ironically enough, Looker, the movie that we did a commentary on earlier, actually kind of predicted, even though that movie's not all that good, by the way. Oh, I will mention it one more time here for those that missed the Looker commentary. I want to give away the Blu-ray. So if you want this Blu-ray of Looker, which has an introduction by Michael Crichton as well as a commentary and a deleted sequence, which is in the television version, just send me an email at stonegasman@gmail.com. The first person that sends me an email with their address, I'll send it to you in the mail free of charge. So if you want a free Blu-ray copy of Looker, just hit me up. Just hit me up. Because I want somebody to watch and appreciate that Blu-ray going forward, because I have no intention of watching it again or of course keeping the Blu-ray. But this one, I will definitely keep this, and I will definitely watch Outland again. I will be watching it definitely again. Maybe not with Peter Hyams' commentary, because like I said, he's certainly not one of my favorite filmmakers or even commentators, but you know, this is a pretty badass movie, and I'm absolutely glad that I finally discovered it. Yeah, like I said, this whole sequence right here, this climactic sequence in space, this is another perfect example of the introvision, the front projection that allows foreground, midground, and background elements to be combined in the camera. That's another excellent example of that, by the way. Now, they actually showed this clip on that Siskel and Ebert review. And that's when Gene Siskel was like, well, these villains are dumb. And Roger Ebert was just kind of like, well, I like to see these dumb villains do dumb things. What? See, so okay, you want to make an argument that the only thing that is not as strong in this film than like High Noon would be the villains. I think that would be absolutely fair. But I mean, hey, I mean, I love Peter Boyle. I mean, I wish he had more scenes in this actually. But oh man, that is, oh, these are just gorgeous, gorgeous shots. Yeah, I mean, I was really locked in my seat for the final 20, 30 minutes of this movie. Pretty stunning stuff. Pretty stunning. Like I said, anybody that's out in the chat, feel free to say hi. Any comments you have on Outland, please put them in the chat, and I'll be sure to share them and everything. What do you all think of Outland? What do you think of this movie? Do you think it works? Do you think the themes work? Do you like it as a space western? What do you all think? Let me know, and I'll be sure to share your comments here. But yeah, I'm more than comfortable with calling this like a 4-star movie, like a 4-star out of 5, maybe 4.25. Maybe 4.25. I mean, and like I said, it very well may be Peter Hyams' best movie. Very well may be. I challenge anyone to do a ranking of his entire filmography. And just to there's one more thing I wanted here to quote. In May of 2021, on May 7th, 2021, over at Collider, Tom Riemann wrote an article, Why the Sean Connery Sci-Fi Movie Outland is a Remake Done Right. The 81 sci-fi thriller successfully updates High Noon by recontextualizing its themes for a modern audience. Outland is a movie that deserves to be talked about, and not merely as a trivia question about the time James Bond did a space movie with a time cop guy. You see, Outland is technically a remake of the classic Western High Noon, starring Gary Cooper as a good-hearted local sheriff named Will Kane, who is forced to face a gang of outlaws on his own after the rest of the town refuses to help. But Outland does more than just update the setting in a cynical attempt to capitalize on the sudden popularity of space movies in the early 1980s. It breaks High Noon down to its essential thematic elements and recontextualizes those elements for a modern audience, allowing the original film's meditations on virtue and duty to resonate as powerfully as they did back in the 1950s, while also providing a bodacious kaleidoscope of shotgun fights in outer space and Pixar favorite John Ratzenberger's head exploding from rapid decompression. Yes. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Definitely. Aw. Oh, no. The strippers are off. Oh, man. They're not dancing on the tables anymore. I guess they got tired. I don't know. it's like, of all the Con Am logos that I've seen in this movie, I think that's the one the first one I've seen that is actually multicolored. Huh. Outland's primary strength as a remake and ultimately as a standalone film is that it takes the thematic conflict of High Noon and updates for contemporary audiences in a way that is still relevant 4 decades later. Will Kane's struggle in High Noon was about the question of duty over self. Will has to decide whether to confront a gang of outlaws coming to town to kill him, putting his life on the line to defend a bunch of people who wouldn't spit on him if his head were on fire, or to hop on a train with his wife and leave town before the gang arrives. It's a well-made drama that subverts the accepted definition of morality in the 1950s by having all the able-bodied church-going townsfolk refuse to help Will. His only aid comes from undesirables like the town drunk and the Mexican hotel owner, Helen Ramirez, played by Katie Jurado. And, of course, Sean Connery's name is, of course, also Will in this movie, with his one ally being Francis Sternhagen as Dr. Lazarus, who is back on screen here as we conclude Outland. Yeah. We are 1 hour and 45 minutes in. 1 hour and 45 minutes in as we conclude Peter Hyams' Outland. Like I said, last chance. Anybody, please let me know your thoughts on Outland, and I'll definitely share it with everybody. Because, I mean, if you've never seen this movie, it is most definitely worth a look. I can't emphasize that enough. I highly recommend Outland. Would make a great double feature with High Noon, actually. It would make a terrific double feature with High Noon. It's definitely one of Sean Connery's better non-James Bond vehicles. Maybe Peter Hyams' best movie, as I've said numerous times. Yeah, definite recommend. Definite recommend. And seriously, I mean, especially consider getting the Blu-ray with the Peter Hyams commentary on it. Message to Carol O'Neill: arriving in time for flight. Keep ticket warm. Job done. Kiss Paul for me. Looking forward to sleeping with you for a year. End transmission. And we close Outland with this glorious final shot of Jupiter from the point of view of Io. And that is Peter Hyams' Outland. I hope you all enjoyed it. I enjoy doing this commentary probably as much as you all enjoyed watching. Costume designer John Molo. John Molo, of course, won the Oscar for the costumes on Star Wars. And Roy Field did the opticals for Superman. So they came over to work on this. Head of video department, Richard Hewitt. I'm not sure what this font is, but I really find the font of these credits really cool as well. Really cool stuff. Really cool stuff. So at any rate, let me let you all know what it will be coming up next weekend. I will not be doing an audio commentary tomorrow night due to work. I will be back on Thursday at 8 p.m. to do an audio commentary for the 1972 Disney movie Now You See Him, Now You Don't, starring Kurt Russell in one of 3 films that he made for Disney back in the 1970s. Here we have our cast for Outland. So yeah, Thursday night will be Now You See Him, Now You Don't. And next weekend, we will be doing a audio commentary for Body Heat, which is the other 1981 Ladd Company release, which came out alongside Chariots of Fire and Looker and Outland. Body Heat may be my personal favorite of all 4 of those movies, though. I think it definitely is. But this was written and directed by Lawrence Kasdan, who also wrote the screenplays for The Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark. So hope you all can join me next Friday night for Body Heat, starring William Hurt and Kathleen Turner in her scorching movie debut. Every time I talk about Body Heat, I always use that word scorching because I think it is absolutely appropriate. But at any rate, thank you all for watching, and thank you all for joining me tonight. Hope you all have a great evening. Thank you very much.